So you just come back from holiday, had a look at your images, dark, horrible, throw away. No, I'm going to show you how to recover them. Hey everybody, Victor from Focused on Wildlife, and in this video I'm going to show you how to recover some of the details in those horrible photos. So I'm going to show you some techniques in post-processing towards the end, and also going to speak about how to get the best images possible. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to improve your details in a photo. A couple of techniques and a couple of tricks, and some post-processing bits and pieces on how to do this. But first of all, let's start by talking about in-camera. So appropriate shutter speeds and appropriate apertures. This is something that's pretty obvious, and as photographers we should know this, but we tend to forget, or we tend to not think about that as much as we can. Also, ISO. Increase your ISO. Don't be scared to increase your ISO. Today's cameras are so good that ISO is no longer as big as an issue as it was. When I started photographing 20 years ago now, ISO 400 and above was unheard of and horrible, and you wouldn't dare go above it. Nowadays, ISO 5000 is probably 20 years ago is 400. So don't be scared to increase your ISO. There's so much techniques, there's so many ways to remove noise, because that's what ISO does, right? Higher ISO, higher noise. So don't be scared. Just increase your ISO and let's worry about the noise that generates afterwards. Technique. So obviously technique's got nothing to do with the camera as such. It's got more to do with you. So having better technique, having a better way of taking photos will help you get better photos. A couple of things that will help you, a couple of tools that will help you take better photos is a tripod. So use tripod, that's what they're there for. Stabilize yourself, stabilize your equipment, stabilize your shot. And be wary of one thing though. Nowadays, tripod manufacturers, their biggest win is to get really light tripods. And you want a light tripod. It's easy to carry, it's lighter to carry, and it's first prize amongst tripods these days. However, what that does is it makes tripods more susceptible to things like wind. So weigh down your tripod. Have in your camera bag what you normally take a kit with. Hook it on the hook. There's a little hook at the bottom of your tripod. Stick it on there and weigh down your tripod. This just helps to stabilize your tripod. A lot of the times I'll see people, they have a tripod, they put it up with the cameras on it, and they put their bag not too far away from the tripod. Rather put your bag under your tripod, hook it on, stabilize your tripod. The other thing is image stabilizer. So image stabilizer, that's a Canon word. In Nikon world, it's VR, so vibration reduction, but it's essentially the same thing. It's on your lens. Nowadays it's in your camera as well, but it's a function of, or it's a tool that tries to counter your natural movement when you take a photo. So image stabilizer are little motors inside your lens that move the lens, or try to move the lens to counter the way you are moving around. Nowadays, the really clever ones know what it is on a tripod, but the silly ones or the stupid ones from back in the day, they don't know. And so they're all trying to move all the time. When you're on a tripod, turn the image stabilizer off. This camera has its image stabilizer off because it's on a tripod. So don't have it on, turn it off. There's no problem in having it off. Do that as a way of just something that you remember doing, and it will help you get clearer images. The other one is use a remote trigger or a self-dive on your camera. Not everybody has a remote trigger. It's usually a little external piece of equipment that's connected via wire, sometimes Wi-Fi. Not everybody has them. It allows you to activate the camera without pressing it. So what you want to get away from is pressing it, and pressing your shutter speed, your shutter button, introduces movement, introduces shake, and so you want to get away from that by using a remote. A remote trigger only activates the internals of the camera and therefore prevents movement. So that's why you use them. However, what all cameras have these days is either a 2-second or 10-second or both, and sometimes they have others. So instead of shooting still frames or rapid fire, there is the little icon which is a clock with a 2 or a 10 next to it. That's what that is. And what it does is You press a button, it takes a little bit of time, either 2 seconds or 10 seconds, before the actuator actually fires. And so it gives that camera time to settle down. So you press it, you introduce a little bit of shake, but it's got 2 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever you choose to settle down and to then take the picture. Right, so that's that. In camera, first prize. Technique helps you get in camera right. Okay, post-processing is the next one. And it's probably one that everybody is bad at. Let's call it that. So post-processing is a way of taking your raw images, a lot of us, most of us, shooting raw these days, taking that and improving it. So I always say a rubbish photo remains a rubbish photo. If you've taken a really blurry, out of focus, horrible photo, nothing you're going to do in post-processing is going to improve it that much that it's going to become an acceptable photo. But when you've taken a decent photo and all you've got is lots of detail, there are ways to improve, and I'm going to show you. So we're going to cover sharpening, remove noise, shadows and highlights, and then texture, clarity and dehaze. Sometimes these are grouped together, but we're going to cover all of these. So starting with sharpening. So I started with sharpening because it is something I want to leave for the end. Here's something that's a little bit controversial. Don't sharpen. Don't always sharpen. A lot of people have sharpening in their process, in their workflow, and they'll do sharpen no matter what. Sometimes their photo doesn't need sharpening, but they'll do it anyway because it's part of their workflow. Don't. Sharpening is something you should do only if required. So I leave sharpening right till the end. A lot of the times I don't sharpen at all. The images I take are sharp enough that sharpening is not required. So I put sharpening right up front because it is something I'd rather leave right till the end. And I'll show you my workflow in a second. Remove noise is something that is undesirable. There's not much noise or not any noise that is you want to leave in a photo. So if you can remove noise effectively, so there's ways to remove noise, then you want to do that. So second point is remove noise. I sometimes do that right at the beginning. I sometimes do it after my basic adjustments, and I'll show you where. I'm just going to run through these, and then I'm going to go and do an actual edit to show you where I do what. Shadows and highlights, that's to improve the detail that you've got, and you'll see that. Shadows is to improve the detail in the darks, and highlights is to improve the detail in the brights. So we'll get to that. And then texture, clarity and dehaze. You know when I said don't sharpen? Sharpen with these tools. I know that sounds crazy, but providing texture and clarity, dehaze is not my best friend, but it's part of that. But providing texture and clarity to an image improves its sharpness, and you'll see it later. There's no such thing as sharpening an image. You can't physically sharpen it like you do a knife. There's no such thing. An image is a flat, I don't know, lifeless thing. It's static. You can't sharpen it. The way sharpening works is it adjusts the micro contrast between pixels, and you perceive it as sharper. It's not really. It's just the micro contrast between pixels that's sharper, or more defined, and therefore looks sharper. Texture and clarity do the exact same thing. They do it slightly differently than sharpening, but ultimately they play with micro adjustment or micro adjusting the contrast. So do it that way rather. I'm going to jump over to Lightroom and edit this. Actually, I use Photoshop, and within Photoshop is Camera Raw. I use that most of the time. But Lightroom essentially is the same as Camera Raw. So if you edit in Lightroom or if you edit in Camera Raw, this is going to be roughly the same. I'm going to use Lightroom just for this demonstration to show you a couple of things. Okay, so this is the raw image, and as you can see, it's horrible, black, and doesn't have any color. So what I'm going to do is, I said sharpening, I'm going to forget about. It's something I'm going to do right at the end. And there's a reason for that is I can't see much detail here to sharpen. So I'm going to leave it in till the end when I've got lots of detail, and I can then decide if I want to sharpen or not. What I can see here is that I don't have much in the way of exposure. So when I talk about basic settings or basic corrections, I'm talking about this panel here. So this panel is called, in Lightroom is called Basic. In camera raw, it's called something else, but it's essentially the same sliders. So I'm going to play with these 6 sliders and I'm going to talk through each one. So exposure, I want to improve exposure. If I improve it too much, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go up and down so you can see the extremes. If I improve this too much, yes, I get more detail, but I do also expose a lot of noise, and my whites are going towards blown. If I have to put this little checker on, actually it's not showing as blown, but to my eye that is blown. So I want to drop this down a little bit, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the exposure to about there. Okay, I've got enough of the animal that I want to see. The other thing is the darks. I can see in the darks that there is potentially more information that I can get out there without going or moving away from too black. This eye is basically almost invisible, so I want to move my shadows a little bit, and I'm going to move that. I can actually move it quite a lot. Don't worry about the noise, we're going to get rid of the noise in a second. So that you can see is starting to make a little bit more visible on this eye. So I'm moving it, my shadows that way. Shadows works with blacks the way whites work with highlights, and so these pairs are basically that, they pairs. You can move them together. So rule of thumb is move blacks and shadows to more or less the same point, and move highlights and whites to more or less the same point. However, I have found that if I move blacks too much, it actually tends to gray out the image. So I don't move blacks as much as I move shadows. So move blacks a little bit. So I'm going to move it a little bit there. You can see my shadows is plus 88 and my blacks is plus 23 on this example, and that is a big difference. Okay, so I've got more detail in the blacks, which is what I wanted, and I now want more detail in the whites. I want to have detail that I can work with later on if I want to do something to it, enough that it is visible or it is detailed, but it's not pure white. So basically, if I go to my shadows and my highlights, and I go and I increase it too much, you can see it's pure white, and if I increase it or decrease it all the way, it actually looks okay in this image, but generally I will introduce some artifacts which I don't want. So I want to put it at a point where I've got quite nice detail in the white, but not too much, and the same with whites. So this one, sorry, I'm moving blacks by mistake. White. So again, you can see it moves. If I move it too much to the right, it tends to blur it. Too much to the left tends to makes it funny looking. But I have found that whites and highlights work well together, so I'm going to put them there more or less the same place. That is my basic settings. If I want to see before and after, I can, but basically what I've done is I've played with the shadows and with the highlights to improve the detail within it. The last one I can work with is contrast. So if I improve, or if I make contrast high, it makes it a lot clearer, but the noise also becomes a lot clearer. And if I drop my contrast, it's a bit like shadows is. It's a bit like that one. And I'm looking mostly at my black. My white I'm not too worried about, but my blacks, if I drop shadows a bit, then it actually gives me a little bit more detail. So if I double click, I'll go back to 0. You can see it gives me a little bit more detail in the shadow. So I'm going to leave it more or less there. Now becomes the fun part. So there are all kinds of third parties that are going to tell you they remove noise. They also sharpen, unfortunately, and some do a good job, some do a horrible job. Be that as it may, if you've got Lightroom or you've got Photoshop, you've got one of the best denoising tools out there, and it's over here. So before you move this over, this denoise button is available to you. It becomes unavailable later. I don't know why, but it does. When you do certain things to it, that denoise becomes unavailable. But if you denoise initially or after you do these basic corrections, it is available to you, so you can use it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit denoise. What denoise does is it brings up a little preview called enhanced, and it basically just shows you what your image is going to look like once noise suppression is added to it. What I like to do is take a little piece of the image, like say for example the ear, and just go look at the details that's left behind as well as the background. So what I want is the details that are left behind got to be nice and sharp, and the background's got to be pretty clean. And I can do this by sliding this up or down. You can see color noise is removed pretty much straight away. So that's before. You can see the blotches of blue and purples and whatever. It's pretty much taken away, and you control the amount of grain you want left behind. Generally you don't want any, and you can see by doing this, even if I go to 100%, I've still got detail here in the little fine hairs. In fact, that little hair there, which I can now see, when the noise was around, I couldn't even see it. So this shows you how good this program is. So I'm going to go and enhance this. It takes a little bit of time. That little icon at the top there shows me how long it's going to take. So I'm going to come back when it's done. And I can see that the noise is pretty much gone. I have no noise, but I still got a lot of detail. So you can look at these fine hairs and you can say, I've got as much detail as I probably want. The eye, even that one's come back a little bit. And this one is beautiful. That one's a little bit in the shade. This is more shady here anyway. The light's coming from here. So that's actually okay. There's a bit of grass that's just above front of his nose. That's why I lost a little bit of detail there. All of that I can live with, and it is okay for me. So if I look at this got loads of detail now. Compare this to what I started with, and it's basically chalk and cheese, and I can recover a lot of this. If I want to sharpen, here's the sharpening. There's one of the ways to sharpen. You can use the sharpening tool inside Lightroom. But if I go and sharpen, you can see, yes, I bring out a lot of detail with the sharpening, especially around this eye, and the hairs look good. But if I had to zoom up a lot on these hairs, they actually start to look a little bit fake, a little bit false. So I probably don't want to sharpen too much. And there you go. So started off with a horrible picture, pure black. I wanted it just about pure black. I wanted to throw it away. It was rubbish. I enhanced a lot of the picture. Lastly, if you like this video, please hit the likes and consider subscribing. I'll see you next time. Cheers.